us.
Happy to be.
Saju,
Happy. My apologies for the delay.
So, I mean, I'll keep the introductions very brief. It's my duty to kick this off because I'm the culprit behind bringing everybody inside the Zoom room. But I mean, to start with, I'm extremely honored to have all of you and your presence here. Please accept a very humble namaste from my side. It's a round table. All of us are equals in this discussion. What we are trying to achieve is collectively, can we all put together a response to an issue that we have never seen so bad in our generation, our lifetime. And as a profession, how can we contribute to a concerted effort in fighting this? And what could be that response? Where could we guide ourselves and our clients? That was the context. And to facilitate that discussion, give us a perspective of what is happening on the ground, we have two great souls here. I mean, Nachiket needs no introduction, but I would say that besides what you know of him, other than what he's done for all of us in the financial services industry, a large part of his life he is dedicated towards health systems, public health, health infrastructure, health design. The rest of the details you already have, the background has been shared. And you've also seen him very active on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on media, trying to encourage all of us to think hard on how we need to respond. So on behalf of all of us, Nachiket, a very warm welcome and thank you for being with us. I will now move to Priya. Priya, as you would see, probably is the youngest in the room. Priya has been part of a larger initiative, and she is the co-founder of Samhita. What Samhita is already all of you know, links have been given, so we will save time. But I would say in a very short way that she is in the epicenter of a substantial amount of coordination that is happening in India across multilateral agencies and CSRs here, and also implementing organizations on the ground. So I think, Priya, that's the simplest way I can put that action that you are doing across to all of us here. So Nachiket and Priya, I think I would hand it over back to you if you would like to now start off. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh. Over to you, Priya.
Nachiket, I think what would be great is if you could just outline for everyone in terms of, what are you seeing in terms of the crisis now? How do you think it's going to play out? And what can a community like this really do to contribute, both now as well as going forward?
So, obviously there's little that I can add to all that you're seeing on television scenes and everywhere. And I'm certainly not a medical doctor. So I've been introduced as a fellow member of your ilk. So there is limits to what I can tell you in terms of diagnostics and, viral loads and all that. All I can say is that, from my vantage point, where I've been involved in connecting with a variety of states, variety of remote areas, this time around, the disease seems to have visibly spread. And I'm saying visibly because it's possible it was there earlier, but we didn't hear about it across the country. We have just, part of another effort I am called ACT Grants and SWAS. And Priya is also a member of that alliance. Amita is a member of that alliance. We have started to ship out oxygen concentrators. And our first consignments reached yesterday in Chhattisgarh, remote Chhattisgarh. And what I'm hearing from there is not good at all. We don't see it on screen, so we don't hear about it. But the district collectors, the local NGOs, I hear from them, and the stories are not good. And the one thing that in some ways, for those of you who are born traders, you will have a sense of what barbell strategies mean. Clearly, we have to do what we can to provide support and relief to members of our family, members of the community that are going to hospitals. There's no debate on that. Unfortunately, though, there are 2-3 kind of salient issues that we need to keep in mind that kind of influence what we try to do. Because one could say, let's just focus on that, do nothing else. And many donors, many people rightly have said, let's just work on that. I'm the entity that I mentioned earlier, Swast. They also run, I'm a board member there. Chris Gopal Krishnan is the board chair. And many of us are board members there. I'm one of the founder board members. They run, for example, a helpline, a crisis helpline. What is the purpose of that helpline? It's fairly limited, which is that you need a bed, you need a ventilator, you need an oxygen concentrator, you need a cylinder. We're going to do our best to help you find it anywhere in the country. One of our volunteers, for example, 10 at night, went to the homes of one old couple and delivered an essential medicine to them because they were immobile. They couldn't go anywhere. Their children were in the US. They were calling us. So obviously this has all got a lot of value. And we must do it. Unfortunate reality, though, is that those people that end up becoming so sick that they do need to end up in these facilities, mortality rates are high. In very young people, the number is close to 50%. And as people get older, the number can go as high as 90, 95%. And no health system in the world can, ours is perhaps not the best, but there's experience out of Lombardy in Italy, which happened in February 2020, more than a year ago. It's one of the best equipped health systems in the world relative to population. But if you merely observe the disease progress and do nothing, those that are going to get well, 80% people, no comorbidity, young people, they might fall sick, but they will get over and move on with their lives. The 20% will fall sick moderately, and will need support. If we wait until they fall severely sick, imagine 20% of the population showing up at hospitals, right? No system can cope with it. So the question that parallel, not, it's not an either or. Parallelly, the word portfolio came up in many of our discussions, that people like me have been working on, is what can we do to prevent people from getting to the point. Now, one would say vaccine, that's a terrific idea, no question about it. Unfortunately, because of the decision of the government to also include 18-year-olds in this mix, the supply has just collapsed. There is no supply in the market. And my sense is we are talking about at least 1 or 2 months before everything ramps up to a point where we can actually do a reasonable job of giving the vaccines out. So at least for a while, eventually the vaccine is the only answer. There's no real other permanent answer. And we know this for smallpox, we know this for measles, we know this for 20 other diseases. We cannot fight these diseases. We have to neutralize them at source. What do we do now in the interim period? There is evidence that came out and has emerged over the last year and become stronger and stronger, that the manner of this, the way this disease progresses, initially you start to get some symptoms, which are flu-like symptoms. The recommendation is take a crocin, make sure you isolate yourself, have, not necessarily wait for RT-PCR results and all that. In fact, one of the big source of the problem seems to be that people are waiting for that result to come before taking any action, because everybody's hoping ki bhai wo nahi hai, kuch aur. But nothing I'm describing right now suggests you are doing anything different from what you would do even if COVID was not, you're not feeling well. It's just that you have to have a low threshold now. not fight it out, not go to office. You know, in the past, even if you're feeling sick, you feel, "Arey, I need to be a good soldier and I'll show up at office." That's a bad idea right now. If you start to feel more seriously ill, oxygen concentration levels, I'm assuming we all have oxygen concentrators, oxygen oximeters at home, are normal, but you're feeling sick. You can sense now that something is not quite right here. Body ache has started. Fatigue is another important symptom. Fever is not going down. There is evidence now that early initiation of steroids, particularly budesonide, which is an inhaled steroid, is helpful. It's not helpful if you start too early, because you don't never know. We can all start taking budesonide right now. It's not a preventive in that sense. But very quickly, what it does, what steroids do, they're not curative. My understanding, and please, I want to remind you again, I'm not a doctor, right? So, please consult your doctor before you do anything. But my understanding of the medicine is it reduces inflammation and allows your lungs and your airways to allow you to breathe, more normally than before. Because the true defense of the virus right now is your own immune system. And sometimes immune systems take time to kick in. So you need to make sure that you are giving it as much opportunity to respond. If oxygen levels fall below, again, as many people you talk to, they will give you different cutoffs. This group, India COVID SOS, that I have a lot of confidence in. It's the global group, Indian group, evidence-based, good group. And they have published guidelines now in every single Indian language. They suggest a cutoff of 92%. You start dexamethasone. And you start oxygen. Now, I recognize oxygen concentrators are in short supply right now, but my impression is, given the flood of concentrators that are hitting India from all possible sources, government itself is importing 1 lakh. Our little group has done 10,000. We hope to do many more. Local manufacturers are ramping up capacity. I spoke to Philips. They are doing what they can. My belief is this month will be a challenging month, but things will ease off quickly on that front. There will be adequate supply, adequate rental markets, adequate this, that, and the other companies like Portia, for example, that can rent you the machine. I wouldn't recommend buying one to keep at home, because the more behavior like this, the less supply there is in the market. But maybe a housing society, maybe in your colony, maybe whatever, right? The belief is, if you take these 2-3 steps, and I have written for CNBC a piece that maybe we can share with you if you're interested. Somewhere near 80% of this 20%, the numbers actually being spoken of are more like 91, 95%. But I want to be conservative, given everything that we know, or that we know we don't know, will not progress to the critical situation. And this is really the big circuit breaker that we need right now, because none of this is happening today in the system. Everybody is migrating to the ventilator stage, right? A, we're not helping them. B, we're not helping the hospital system. And I know we as a country are ashamed to see what we are seeing. Oxygen, politicking is going on. But believe you me, New York went through this. London went through this. We are looking worse than everybody else because our sheer numbers are so much. And we don't really have a controlled health system. People are doing all kinds of things. And unfortunately, not everybody in the medical community is also helping as much as they ought to. Right? Just in case bed nahi milta hai to bhai le to lo. Now that kind of approach, what that does is, a person who needed it didn't get it. Person who didn't need it is sitting on it. Right? Now, of course, you might say from an individual perspective that makes sense, because what if I don't get it? But if all of us think like that, it's called prisoner's dilemma in game theory. That if I rat on the next guy, I will get free. But if he rats on me, I will he will get free, I won't. If both of us rat, both of us are in jail. The best strategy is nobody says anything, right? But it's a dilemma, because do I trust the other guy or not, right? But the only, equilibrium to that is, being calm, being patient, and following these strategies. So that's kind of where, my head is at. We are working as a group to try and understand the vaccine situation globally. Globally, there is surplus of some of the key vaccines that we need, in particular AstraZeneca. There is surplus. There is surplus, I'm told, of J&J vaccine as well. But who has it? How is it to be done? It's really ideally a role for the government. But, unfortunately, what has happened a little bit is central government seems to have withdrawn a little bit from this role. I don't have a good sense of what's going on there, but at least that's the impression I have. So anyway, we have to solve the vaccine issue. The oxygen concentrator issue is still a problem. It's still looking to raise money. It's still looking to bring it in. But I must say, in the last few weeks, I've met some amazing people. I don't know if you've heard of Himkund Foundation. They run these oxygen langars. So, I spoke to them, and remarkable people. They work in this Gurdwara type settings. They have emptied out Gurdwaras and said, okay, we're going to use this stuff. They're getting American concentrators. I asked them, well, what about the 110 volt issue? They've rewired the entire Gurdwara to be 110. They said, no, these are not problems for us. We have figured out all this stuff. And the car savers, the volunteers, were getting nervous. He has imported grade 1 equipment. Those fancy glasses, those gowns. I mean, nobody can give anybody 100% assurance, but no doctor in the world is wearing better equipment for protecting them than the car savers of Himkund Foundation. So, I'm just, they're just remarkable what people are doing. I must say, the volunteers, and anywhere your clients, you yourself, can help out, can participate. But if you can work with them to get them not to panic, because we can do some things, we can't do everything. There's a lot that we are dependent on other people to help us out with. But there are things we can do. Manufacture, for example, I speak to local manufacturers, they tell me everybody wants today. But this was the problem even 1 month ago, right? And he had supply for 1st of May. Today, they have supplies for middle of June, early July, but there are no buyers for that. Everybody wants today, and we are all waiting for the today. The today is shifting. And unfortunately, his goalpost is shifting. Now, you might say, well, what if we buy the concentrator for July and it's not needed? But that's the beauty of this thing. Basic low flow oxygen is one of the 30 essential medicines of WHO. It is helpful for COPDs, for asthma, for delivery of babies, for tuberculosis, for 100 other things. If you buy it, you give it to a PHC, give it to a clinic, they will thank you for the next 10 years. We did this, with private effort. Priya got involved, other people got involved. About 500 we did, last year. There wasn't that kind of enthusiasm for this idea that there is now. Right? Somebody, a manufacturer, told me that a month ago you were sitting on 4,000 unsold pieces where there was no demand. But the feedback we are getting is that a baby got saved, and person with tuberculosis got more time to recover. Somebody got a heart attack. Somebody who was battered by her husband, got relief. So anyway, I'm just saying this would be, I'm happy to answer questions, but kind of this is where my head is at as to what can we do as ordinary citizens. That's what I'm trying to do. And I'm, helping out, trying to raise the money, trying to find the supplies. Fortunately, I tell you something, people talk about Indian business community, Indian startup community. I have seen it in action. Right? Large players are not able to find the supplies that these people have found. I talk to somebody else, they say 20 concentrators I've been able to find, and I'm getting from somewhere. I talk to these guys, they're talking about 5,000, 10,000, 15,000. They're getting planes filled up. There's too much political interest, so I'm not allowed to say what is the total we are bringing in. But let me assure you, it's a mind-boggling number. And we are delivering in the heart of Bastar. I spoke to the collector this morning. It's a remote area. I don't even fully know exactly what to call it. He has gotten the machines. He is installing them as we speak. I told him, you send me pictures, you send me, what have you done with those machines in a place called Sarguja? Most of us have never been there. Most of us haven't heard of it. But disease burden is such, he says to me, sir, that if we don't respond quickly, I could lose entire villages. And then tomorrow we will resort deep Naxal areas. And then tomorrow we'll complain that these people don't trust the union. They are working with local thugs. But, there's no excuse for working with local thugs at any point. But the lack of confidence, if we don't help them now, I can see why they might feel somewhat betrayed. Anyway, I'll stop here. I don't know if, Priya, I told you I have a little bit of a tendency to go on and on. So please feel free to any other questions or whatever you think is the right thing.
Thanks, Nachiket. So what I thought I'll do is maybe just quickly go through, a few notes that we had put together. And Nachiket, if you can come in even as I present some of this, I'll take another 10 minutes and then, really bring that all of you can ask your questions as well. Do let me know once you can see my slides. Are you able to see it now?
Yes, Priya, we can
Yes.
see the slide.
Yes.
So, if I were to literally just kind of give away what I was hoping to cover, broadly three things, right? Today more than ever, private philanthropy is needed across the world. I mean, we've seen an outpouring of support from India, from outside. And so the role that you can play right now, but you can also get your clients to play, is phenomenal. The second is that you are extremely well positioned to guide this private philanthropic effort, right? You are closest to individuals who are making decisions in terms of money. Philanthropy is very much like that. It's very personal. And so who better than you? And then the third is, I think like Nachiket said, particularly in the last few years, there is a large community that's built up in the social sector, people with government experience, private sector experience, etc., who are willing to be extremely collaborative and help you become these trusted advisors. You have these, we don't. We have some expertise in other areas, but really, I think the hope is to rely on you, right? So like I said, I think, across the board, tremendous support, not just financial, not just in kind, but mental support, right? We're seeing families of children who are in the US and UK and in Australia, and then I think all of us are in any case doing our best to try and help people out. The reality is, I think while a lot of people want to help, they are confused. They don't know who to trust. There's a lot of work a lot happening on social media. There are retail donation sites, but they are overwhelming. And for the average person who in any case is, struggling to figure his stuff out, this can be very, very overwhelming. You don't really know how to respond. And then you get into some sort of an analysis paralysis kind of mode, right? But the reality is that most people are asking the same questions about philanthropy that they're also asking about their finances. Where should I put my money? Who should I trust? How do I evaluate these options? What does my impact look like? Should I create a portfolio, right? And today, while you feel like you're not fully ready to answer these questions, I mean, we can help, but it needs to be a collaborative effort. I know that the nonprofit sector forever has been trying to reach out to individual philanthropists, but I don't think that we can ever do as good a job as you can do. You have the relationships, you have the insights, etc. Really just a question of being able to work together. Some sort of basic advice, right, that you can already provide. And again, I think a community of us can really support you, is really to say, how much should I give? I mean, should it be 2%, 5%, 10%? Very similar to the questions they're asking you, right? So, while Nachiket kind of talked about the here and now, I wanted to look a little bit in the future. So what is critical right now? And, it's a shame, Nachiket's been talking about oxygen for 13 months now, right? And it had to come to this. It had to come to this crisis where, Indians are gasping for breath. We could have got our act together. But it requires the private sector, philanthropy, the public sector, and people to come together to make these decisions with evidence, with an understanding. Unlike the financial market, where you have lots of research, lots of data, lots of insights, the social sector is really poor. And the only way to get around that is really through this collaborative method. Right? But broadly, sort of how is this going to play out? One, absolutely the need for immediate healthcare is here and now. But what the media is not covering and what we are not paying attention to is the livelihood crisis. Remember that last year, people's savings got wiped out. They lost jobs en masse. They were just about barely recovering, and you've hit them with another crisis right now. How are they going to survive, right? So just because the media isn't covering it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be worried and we shouldn't plan for it. The third is think about education and think about environment. You have schools that have been shut for a year. What is it going to take for us to get back our already struggling education system back, bring girls back to school, bring teachers back, bring students back? The entire affordable private school market has been crushed. No fees have been paid. Teachers have been laid off. And now these school entrepreneurs and the government are going to have to rebuild trust in the education system, right? So a lot of work really needs to be done. What are we focused on? I think we've just divided our response between the immediate, the short term, and the medium term. Just because we are focusing on the immediate doesn't mean that we're ignoring the short and the medium term. We're already beginning to plan for it and raise funds for it and begin execution. I'll talk through some of these in detail in just a minute. When I first came into the social sector, even as I sort of talk to people, everyone believes that things have that they're very limited instruments, right? Just like you are advising your clients on a range of instruments. What's happened in the last couple of years is that a lot of innovation has actually happened even within the philanthropic ecosystem. I wanted to just spend 2-3 minutes talking about some work that we started doing last year, which is again beginning to become very relevant this year. So last year after the crisis, we partnered with USAID, the British High Commission, UNDP, the Dell Foundation, the Media Network, many companies to basically invest in the revival of individuals and enterprises who had lost their jobs. A few things were distinct. One, that the number of people who had been affected was very large. That people who had climbed out of poverty over decades were facing just this crisis, knowing that they were going to plunge back in. They had lost their jobs and livelihoods and savings. Second, that very little amounts of money was available and a large need needed to be responded to, right? And so we had to come up with ways to be more creative, find leverage, right? Really, get scale in terms of what we were attempting to do. So what we came up with is a bunch of new, these are not new instruments, but it was just a way of bringing everything together. Now, imagine, two people, right? A dabbawala who was delivering and then lost his job. And think about a fruit juice wala who was, let's say, selling right below your buildings, who suddenly, because everything was closed, didn't have a source of income. They are not the poorest of the poor. NGOs weren't helping them. The government wasn't helping them. No one was helping them, right? And so what we did is came up with a very simple concept called a returnable grant, which meant that we gave money to this dabbawala. He used it to get upskilled and he used it to find a job in Amazon as a delivery boy. We gave it to the fruit wala and he actually just used it to survive and then set up his little thing, outside a hospital instead of an office. Now, they needed the money then, but they took the money and in 3 to 4 months, once things were okay, they repaid the money back. And that money went to someone else and someone else and someone else. And so you suddenly have a small amount of money giving you a 5 to 7x return just because it's actually just revolving, right? What else did we do? We said, take this money, and we actually gave the money through an NBFC partner. So 2 things happened. One, the NBFC partner got to know this dabbawala or this fruit wala, who otherwise they would never have given money to. And they found that this individual was actually able to pay it back exactly like a loan, but no one was taking a risk. The NBFC didn't take the risk. The other guy didn't take the risk. A returnable grant is a moral, not a legal obligation to repay. Once the guy pays the money back, both the NBFC and the individual are far more comfortable working with each other. And therefore, now what we're doing is we're convincing the NBFC to actually give a loan to this guy, knowing that the guy can't pay the 24% interest. So what we're doing is we're actually subsidizing the interest. So we've raised money as a grant. And what we're saying is that you took 10,000 rupees, you have to pay 2,400 as an interest. After every 3 installments, let me give you 300 rupees and 300 rupees and 300 rupees as a simple grant. Two things happen. One, because we are giving a grant, his interest burden goes down, doesn't have to pay back at the 24%, which he can't afford. But second, you're incentivizing good repayment. So the guy is actually able to pay back. Maybe in the third cycle, he takes the loan again and can afford the 24% once things get back, right? So we're sort of using this combination of a returnable grant, a first loss default guarantee, which protects the NBFCs from lending to high-risk communities, an interest subsidy. And we are doing this with the same players. The nonprofit finds individuals, the NBFCs and the MFIs, give this grant or returnable grant. Hopefully, this person gets mainstreamed in the formal economy. Not changing anything, just plugging the gaps and creating almost a continuity in terms of how we are layering on the support. In addition to this, we are providing skilling, we are providing training and capacity building, market linkages, and doing it at scale. The one thing I do want to add, and Nachiket, if you could come in, is what's new in this crisis is for the first time, everyone is terrified of healthcare. So we are finding that communities where 3 people were going for work, now only 1 person stepping out because they don't want to, or because they're looking after a caregiver. So for the first time, you have people actually thinking about healthcare. And Dwara Money, which is a partner we're beginning to work with, has this amazing product, which has 3 things which are highly critical. 1, basic health savings, knowing that savings have been wiped out and will be needed. 2nd, unlimited medical consultation with doctors, which means that all of these questions, should I take a vaccine, should I not take a vaccine, does somebody have COVID, not have COVID, just the number of queries have gone up. Doctors aren't necessarily available. And so somebody can literally just pick up a phone and have unlimited consultations. And the third, which I know that Nachiket's been a big fan of, is this catastrophe insurance, right? Maybe they can get by right now. If they get hit by cancer another 6 months from now, that family is really, really in trouble. So what we're doing is using philanthropic grant money, and this is money coming from USAID and all of the others. So really, we've got legal opinions, we've got opinions from KPMG. So it's really, well thought through. But what we're doing is using philanthropic money to pay the first premium or the first 3 sets of premium or the first kind of savings account so that people are incentivized to adopt this, use this, and as things recover, then they can start paying. So philanthropy comes in at this level, very quickly peters down as individuals then are able to actually take the product and kind of run with it. Nachiket, did you want to speak for a minute or two on this?
No, I think you've done a brilliant job, Priya, of explaining, so many of these wonderful ideas that, you mentioned. I mean, clearly one issue that I do want to plug, which Priya said is my favorite idea, is, the unfortunate reality in India is that we spend enough money on healthcare, both upper income and lower income households. But because we have not been able to find good ways to pool that money, a lot of that expenditure is done poorly. One is at the primary care level, where people are not seeking care when they need to, but you might say, well, where should they go? Like this oxygen concentrator issue that I mentioned. Why does not every primary care clinic that you go to have one of these, right? And for those that are interested, I'm happy to talk separately. We are doing in primary care a fraction of what even a country like Rwanda is doing in its primary care settings, right? And there is a lot of work to be done there. But it's not obvious necessarily that pooling will solve that problem. You're all wealth management professionals. You will know that pooling actually has the most impact when the central limit theorem kicks in and you have high volatility, high uncertainty, but you're working with each other to try and manage that. And in an environment where the government is reducing health expenditures year after year, or not increasing them for sure, but as states have gotten richer, they've reduced their commitments to health. Maharashtra spends 0.6% of GDP, for example. UP spends 1.3%. of their GDP on healthcare. People have to figure out what to do. And this idea of, what we are now calling super top-up type products really have to become the mainstay of any insurance frame, even at the lower income categories. Currently, they're being sold as super top-up for the super rich, but they have to become, more universal. They're cheaper, and potentially a low-income, middle-income family can sustain that level of insurance for a long period of time. So anyway, I'll stop here.
And I mean, the reason I'm presenting this to you is because, the common understanding is that there are only grants, right? I mean, what's unique about the position that you occupy is you are having these conversations with your clients. You're helping them plan their finances. You're helping them think through health insurance. The question is, how can we co-create this with you so that you can bring in the same level of insight to other development professionals who are trying to offer this service, but to the base of the pyramid? And how can you get your clients who are making similar decisions for their own finances and their own life to also then provide a little bit of their almost philanthropic funding to enable a large proportion of India to also take this on? The intent is that this needs to be scalable and this needs to be sustainable. What was amazing is we were very afraid when we launched the returnable grant. We had a 93% repayment. We had 100% repayment from cohorts such as farmers, 89% from the most vulnerable, which are street vendors, women who are running small salons, which never really took off. I mean, 89% is phenomenal at a time like this, right? Now, all of these people are saying, give me money, I will pay it back. Help me figure out this health plan. I will ensure that we sustain it. So really small amounts of money can go a really long way, not in terms of just creating impact, but building much better financial and healthcare resilience within the entire ecosystem. I'll just spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes and then quickly sort of, Nachiket talked about oxygen, which is what we're currently responding with. We're running a very large campaign on vaccines. Vaccines is a double whammy for the poor, right? You don't get vaccinated, you're afraid to go and work. You don't get vaccinated, your risk is very high, you're stuck at home, and therefore you have like this large payout. And so we absolutely have to get people vaccinated. What we're doing is partnering with donors and corporates to ensure that our NGO partners go door by door and ensure that every single family member who's eligible actually gets on the CoWIN app and actually shows up and gets vaccinated. So we're giving NGOs 100 rupees to get the first vaccine, 250 rupees to ensure that the person is fully vaccinated. The same individual gets a food packet, masks, etc., to say, great, you've got a vaccine, but remain healthy, right? And then, like Nachiket said, also sort of increasing temporary capacity, but in a way to say, how will this equipment actually build long-term capability? I just want to say that while I'm talking through a bunch of these ideas, now you may find that your clients can give a few thousand rupees, a few lakhs, maybe a few crores, but all of these, can be supported with as little as 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees, right? The same thing, I mean, you can just do a unit cost and ensure that a lot of this can be supported both now as well as going forward. I want to spend just 1 minute on this. Again, this is something that we're working with Nachiket. We found that in urban areas, a lot of us, when we actually need healthcare, go to our pharmacists, right? You pop a Crocin first. If you don't get better, then you go to the doctor. And so now we're figuring, can pharmacists play the role of a trusted healthcare advisor? Any case you're calling them up and asking them for medicine, but can you really ensure that they follow the right protocols, that they are trained, they're giving the right medicine? We found that more than 90% of pharmacists live in the same community for decades. And so they have no incentive to cheat someone, but they still do, right? And so how do we shift this thinking from a short term, let me sell someone, a medicine at a higher price, to I am vested in the healthcare of this individual. So we're almost incentivizing pharmacists to say, if a patient who, let's say, has high hypertension, if you help that patient manage his blood pressure, etc., we will actually pay you for it, right? So kind of thinking about using local actors, trusted partners in ways to deliver better healthcare. livelihoods. I talked about a range of support. A lot of governments have announced schemes, but people don't access it. So we are working with a series of partners to ensure that people who actually are eligible for schemes are able to get it. And then a series of things on working capital. I did talk about this, which is, trying to ensure that everything that we do around financial inclusion, we are doing this at scale. So for example, we're starting with supporting 10,000 Kirana stores that will go up to 500,000 over the next few months. We're starting with a few thousand sanitation workers, will support 50 to 100,000 sanitation workers. So everything that we're doing is actually being designed for scale, because the needs of a maid or a driver or your Kirana store owner are all distinct. And instead of trying to find different solutions, we are taking one cohort and just ensuring that we're able to get them connected to FMCG companies, banks, government schemes, any other markets, customers. We're doing it at scale. One last thing is we're also beginning to partner a lot with large corporates to say what happened last year. While the government was at fault, we are also at fault. We pushed all of our risk on the most vulnerable. So how do you change procurement practices, labor practices to do better things? Now, philanthropy doesn't need to do any advocacy, but philanthropy can pay for some of this advocacy that nonprofit partners do, and will go a really long way. I talked about education, which is really the need of the next few months will be to ensure that all our schools, private and public, really are able to get back and bring in all of the children who've been left behind, and do more, because you have to undo all of the losses of the last 1 year. And plastic, I mean, don't even get me started about all of the new plastic crises that we've created with masks and gloves and injections and all of that, in addition to everything else, right? So there will be a renewed effort. These are also causes that individuals very easily identify with. You've had a global movement around plastic, and therefore easy to talk about some of these even to your clients. So just to conclude, there is a surge in individual philanthropy. You are extremely well positioned to be that trusted partner. The same principles that you use for financial planning can be customized to even think about philanthropic planning. And really, we are all here to help, right? I think, this is a shared battle, and whatever you need, all of us are here. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you, Nachiket, for taking us through. Priya, would we be able to share this presentation with everybody? Is that okay? Great. We will do that for all of you. And, we do have some questions that came up on the chat as we were speaking. Maybe in the interest of time, we can try to look at those questions that are connected to the solutions that were given. Some of the government policy and other matters, etc., might take longer to discuss, but some of those are excellent questions. So if I can pick a few, Priya and Nachiket, for your kind attention. One was, are there specific, is there anything specific that can be handed out to clients to tell them, okay, if you want to put your 10,000, 50,000, here's the vehicle, or here's this, is there something? That's what came up from Dilshad. Dilshad is from Bangalore.
So absolutely happy to work with you to put something together, right? And, we can consult with Nachiket and a bunch of other experts also. So broadly, to come up with something that makes sense, we are happy to provide ideas, information, right? And provide literally like a menu of options. And if you some of you can also weigh in to say, from a client's perspective, how will they make those decisions, and how should they think about one-time giving, giving versus monthly allocation. So absolutely happy to work with you on not just what to give and who to give to, but also how to give.
That will certainly help, Priya. I mean, I'm also privy, and I'm also aware that many mutual fund companies have joined hands, and Himanshu and team have picked up this upskilling and training initiative to bring in employability amongst a lot of people who might have lost jobs during this time, to get them on board as mutual fund distributors, because that's an easier exam to pass in comparison to some of the other charters here, like the wealth management charter or the CFA charter, but at least a stepping stone. So part of it could be some slides or some takeaways for such newly inducted people into the system, where they talk about investment products. Could we also give them maybe some basics so that this also can be carried back to? So that's a wonderful thought that came in just now. There is one interesting question that came up, in terms of repayment. You mentioned 93%, 87%. The question was, is it really happening? Is the government's loan write-offs really coming in the way of people thinking, what, it's better to take from government or other banks and forget about it? Anything you want to?
Yeah, like I said, we are 100% repayment from our farmer cohorts. We had 89% from a lot of our women enterprises. We had women actually do three things that we weren't expecting. We went to them with a 10,000 rupee grant, and they said, don't give us 10,000. You give us 3,000 first. If I repay, then you give me another 3,000. And if I repay, then you give me 4,000. I was not expecting this, right? This is a returnable grant. They have no obligation to pay. And yet they were so conservative. We had women and across the board who insisted that all of the grant agreements be in their local language, and that they wanted to have a conversation with my team and the NBFC team. We were not expecting this. So, so initially we anchored success in terms of will people repay? And does repayment mean that, there is both the willingness and the ability to repay? And we've really been overwhelmed with at least the initial data that's coming in. We're also running a lot of behavior experiments to say, for example, we tell somebody, if you don't repay, then you are depriving someone else who got the support that you did. Versus if you repay, then you become a champion for somebody else, right? So even using altruism as a way to figure out if people will pay or not pay. Like I said, what we're also doing is to say, take this money, pay it if you can. If you pay it, you get eligible for a loan. We will subsidize the interest rate. We will provide a credit guarantee. And therefore, this is a good way for you to get mainstreamed. Take this loan, use it for digitization or skilling or whatever. If you repay it back, we will give you something else. We will give you this health insurance product. We'll give you something else, right? So also anchoring while you're focusing on the repayment, you're also building other enablers around it to ensure that that individual actually is able to thrive and therefore is able to repay, but also that he or she understands that this is a good thing to do. This is going to help them for the rest of their lives. So a lot of work is actually going in, designing this, etc. But again, happy to co-create this with you, right? These products were designed in 2 days because we just needed to respond. But we have another month before we start again ramping this up, and would love to chat with you guys if you have any ideas. And also what you are seeing, right, with your own clients, and if some of this can mimic some of those incentives or behaviors or nudges.
Thanks for that. Nachiket, there are also messages coming in. Harsh Runta had a few points here talking about, evolving products which could be credit rated, grants that can be returnable, but the interest portion of such products, going back into the benefit of the country and the people. I think that also calls for another deeper round of brainstorming on product ideas, right? How we can work on them. Would that be a good point to take back?
Yeah, I mean, Priya actually would be the right person to be engaging with these questions. I'm a little bit buried right now in public health concerns and trying to figure out what to do. Priya and team have really done a remarkable job of, corralling many people. I'm called in whenever there's some health set of questions, but there are other people working with her on design issues, and some of you are deep experts in this. Maybe you can become a part of her think tank, helping her design what to do, what not to do. Because one powerful thing that Priya and team have is they can convert these ideas into execution, into partnerships, into, some of the largest corporates are working with them on these issues. What they bring to the table is convening, clarifying, making sure they represent all sides of the table. And I've been working with them for quite a while now. And I must say, it's been a tremendously rewarding and satisfying experience for me.
Another point that came up was, and I can understand why Dhruv was asking this question, because I just mentioned one of our possible attendees is actually hospitalized. So, while we read a lot about COVID and what one should do, and maybe we are aware as well, but actually dealing with the issue, many a times families just, are left with no ideas. If there is a problem in the family, what are the first few things to do? The first 3 steps to take, the first 5 things to do? Is there some checklist, something that has been created? Anything that you have come across which can be very helpful for people who are actually dealing with this issue?
No, there is a surfeit of this material, and the protocol that I'm referencing in all my work now, which I think is a very high quality protocol, is the one produced by India COVID SOS. It's a global group, Indian, foreigners, everybody is involved in it. They have produced home care guidelines in all possible Indian languages. I would say, take a look at that. We are working with state governments to execute them. Gujarat government has issued them as the Government of India, Government of Gujarat approved guidelines. We're working with Government of Punjab on this. So clearly there is clarity there. As I said earlier, the quicker we respond to this disease, the quicker we even somewhat overreact to it by isolating, hydrating, and much of the time the disease will contract on its own. If we wait in fear and hope that, oh, it's not, I'm waiting for RT-PCR, I'm fine, it's just allergy, it's something else, then the things start to get a little bit messier, is my sense of the disease. And we are also in ACT now developing a whole home care approach, working with people like Step One and all of that. But I would say India COVID SOS is a good site, good verified high quality site to look at.
Sure. We have Sadiq dropping in the link for all of us. Thanks, Sadiq. Quickly, in the interest of time, I also got a message from Amit who shared that there are organizations or companies like Brezo, which is sending out O2 cylinders at about 700 rupees for 12 liters. Is that something that we have come across as a widely used immediate quick intervention in cases of short supply? Have we come across anything?
I don't know. My sense is if somebody could email me, I can put it in the helpline, I can put it in resources. At Swasth, we have built with the Kerala, the fancy war rooms that you see. There's a young group of volunteers that started it last year called Corona Safe. Swasth has collaborated with them to build out a validated list of oxygen suppliers, hospital bed suppliers, medicine suppliers, etc. So I would be happy to share this with the LIFE team, and they will verify it independently. And if it makes sense, they will add it to that list. It's getting used heavily. Unfortunately, you have to keep it current, and that's always a bit of a challenge. So there's an army of volunteers trying to do that, because every minute situation changes. It's like a trading portal. Unfortunately, without the data sources that you're all used to from the stock exchanges. So, I don't know specifically about this particular company or this particular product, but oxygen is indeed a vital resource right now. And the more we can help with that, the better off we are.
Thank you, Nachiket. So we'll get, so with your permission and Priya's permission, we can share your email IDs with the group so that they can reach out to both of you.
No, for sure. I'm just saying, because I'm seeing many questions that are directed at me as to, which medicine should I take and which I'm not the right person for that. I'm like one of you. In fact, I'm less than one of you. I used to be a bond trader at one point. I've lost that skill also. So now really all I can do is pontificate at 30,000 feet, which, is, if you need more of that, I'm your man. But specific questions, I can point you to guidelines. I would say Priya and team have actually much of what you need. And my suggestion would be to work with Priya in case there is something that she needs, because she knows what I can do and not do by now. So she will ping me or ping other experts, depending on what is needed. So I would say that might be a better idea than writing to me directly. But as I said, these are all friends. Please share my email address with them. If they want to write to me, I'm always happy to talk to them.
Sir, can I add 2 points here since we have been part of this discussion? And I thought after listening Nachiket sir and Priya, so there were 2 thoughts which came to my mind, and I thought if we can share that, since you guys are already working so much in this domain, and you can add a lot of value. So one idea which comes to my mind, since we come from this financial profession, one is of lately, recently when this Delhi government also, when this COVID came, so they make this insurance company include the COVID as a disease in the insurance disease to be covered for the claim. What I look at is if we are able to put more to the government through the right channels, that if we can make the home treatment also by making a little changes in the insurance claims, that we can make this home claims permissible under the insurance, because right now only the hospitalization claims are permissible for taking the claims, because this will help us to reduce a lot of hospital stress. I understand there would be maybe 5-10% of cases where people would try to take advantage and take money out of this, but 90% of the people can get benefited from this scenario what is happening. So I think if we can put this to the government in the right way, this giving a claim, people who are getting it treated at the home, maybe doctor supervision or hospital can be involved in this in some way, so that the more transparency can be created. I think that can really help us to reduce the pressure on the the hospitals which are there, because creating a bed immediately is again a very big problem. Giving those so number of beds, then oxygen concentrators we have been talking about. So all those issues already are persisting. But I think if we are able to at this point at the government level, this will really help us to bring the stress to a grade down to lower for the mild and the moderate cases for the COVID which are there. Second point which I would also like to add here is, right now, like Priya also stated, one of the issues on that, and one of the beautiful, I think, thing we are doing on that doctors availability on that unlimited calls you can do. I think one thing more as an addition, if we can do, the doctors are there, and we also, I come from a body, American Academy of Financial Management. We have a set of a lot of certificates and members there. We can also circulate amongst our members that whatever the known doctors are there, if we can ask them for a mass Zoom calls rather than individual calls on different symptoms and different cases, there we can reach out to the masses on a very quick number, because right now we are running a lot of short of time. So it's good that if we can reach out the masses. That's the point I think we can. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Vyas. I just before, because I am mindful of Nachiket's time, he had a sharp stop at 2. We are 2 minutes ahead, but beyond. But Nachiket, thank you so much for joining us. We will hang on for a few more minutes. But thank you so much for joining us. A big thanks from all of us.
And thank you for inviting me and listening to me. And as I said, I'm always available to take any of these discussions forward. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Priya, please hold on. Thanks, Priya. 2 minutes, and then we will close. Thank you. So, good 2 points from Vyas. I think what we've done, at least as a next step, Priya, if I can just quickly summarize, there are some questions, but in the interest of time of everybody, I think few things that we can carry back, Priya, is one, each of us can reflect back on some of the discussions that we had today, some of the thoughts that you shared, particularly the returnable grants, the structures revolving around it. I'm sure there would be a lot of questions around overlaps. There are peer-to-peer platforms. There are many structures out there. So I think maybe it calls for a deep dive as professionals to understand this domain a little more. So maybe that calls for one more catch up with all friends here. The second was, something that if we can, if there was any, like you said, any small or a very small write-up that we can give to our clients, irrespective of how much of a time we take to come back, then we could give that. We could share it with all the member organizations here, and we can make it a point to send it on email to our customers, our friends, our family, whoever. Maybe at least do that. How can we participate? That is the other key takeaway. Last but not the least, yeah, sorry, Priya. Go ahead.
I'm going to finish what you were saying.
Last but not the least, there were a few who were mentioning they are doing different things, and this was expected because everybody would be doing something. Maybe I would suggest that for those of you who have some connected activities going, maybe you can share that with Priya so that she can see how that dovetails with any of those larger initiatives, or at least you catch up one-to-one and find out where is that convergence so that you can take it forward. These were the 3 things that I wanted to say. Priya, to you.
Absolutely. So if you're already part of certain initiatives, if you know NGOs who are doing good work or need more support, to write into us. We work with many sort of hundreds of thousands of NGOs, and whatever support we can offer and kind of connect them to all the resources we're gathering, that would be fantastic. Second, I will send like just a menu, right? Like a short write-up. Who can it help? How much money? And we'll make it as modular. So people want to give 500 rupees, that's fine. 5,000 rupees, that's fine. Right. So I think you just have a sense of it. We'll also put it up on our website so that if people need more information, they have it. And it's also good for you, right, to just redirect them to other resources wherever possible. What I would love is, if there is a smaller group where I can present some of the work, but also challenges and answers that we don't have, and get your thoughts, would love to sort of co-create some of this with you, both on the solution side, but also in terms of how do you really engage your clients, right? This needs to be a movement. I mean, we as India really need people and philanthropy to step up, because our government can only do so much and private sector can only do so much, right? So any way that you can help, and do it in a way that, it integrates with what you do, you hopefully will get a lot more joy and inspiration from it. And I'm sure that your clients also will, just feel a deep sense of commitment and gratitude. So we're hoping if we can do this with you, that would be fantastic. And I mean, you don't only need to do this with Samhita. I'm happy to connect you to a lot of other organizations who are doing similar work as well.
Then I have to say thank you to all of you, and wish good health to you and your families. Stay safe, and we will meet again what do you say? I'm sure, I'm very, very positive that all the minds here and our friends behind who are watching us on YouTube, and our people who didn't join us today, everybody is committed to doing something collectively. That I can clearly mention from whatever I have heard from grateful for that. Thanks a lot, all of you, for joining.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. And thanks a lot for your question.
Rajesh, thanks.
Thank you, Rajesh sir. Thank you, Priya. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.